The UFC has a large assortment of weight classes, everything from women's strawweight all the way up to men's heavyweight. And listen, there's no mystery that some divisions are just better than others, okay? There's no shame to admit that. And in this video, I'm going to take all the UFC divisions, put them in a tier list, E tier being the absolute worst division that the UFC has, all the way up to S tier being, frankly, just the best division in the organization. And I would recommend anybody that is getting into MMA to watch said division. But before we begin, please consider a like, a subscribe, and a comment. It really helps me in the algorithm. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're on track to do so, 1,300 right now. And without further ado, let's get started. First division that we're going to be covering is women's featherweight. Dude, okay. The reason that I want to open with this one is because this is no doubt the worst division that the UFC not only has, but probably has ever had. The only reason that it is still kept around to today and they didn't just retire it with Amanda Nunes is because ONE FC has a women's featherweight division and they don't want to concede that they don't have the best in most divisions out of everybody in MMA. So they just keep it around for the sake of, hey, we have a women's featherweight division too. Problem is they put they put no effort into it. Look up the power rankings for women's featherweight on the UFC.com or UFC app. There is nobody. You will get an error. No fighters found. That doesn't happen with any other division, okay? That doesn't even happen in women's bantamweight. That another division that we're going to cover. But women's featherweight is the worst division that we've ever seen. And this is no slight to Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is still the best women's MMA fighter of all time. But before she retired, some of y'all were getting a little bit crazy and arguing that she's accomplished so much in women's MMA that we should put her in the top 3 or even the top 5 of the GOAT list of MMA, including both. And gotta ask you something. What are you smoking, brother? One of her divisions doesn't even exist. They had to pull people to her division to fight. Like, dude. Like, we didn't have to make up a division for Conor McGregor, and I would argue Conor is above Amanda Nunes. So, like, make no mistake. Best women's MMA fighter. One of her divisions that she ruled over as a double champion really didn't exist, honestly. And for that reason, it is the absolute lowest of the low, purely because it almost doesn't exist. And that's why it goes in E tier. The next division that we're going to cover is women's bantamweight. I want to get the rough ones out of the way, okay? And then we can get into the good stuff later on in the video. But women's bantamweight is also pretty rough, frankly. Now, don't get me wrong. I think we're going to get better in the next couple years. Because if the UFC had any common sense that they would cut women's featherweight and divert all those resources to bantamweight. Because Bantamweight is suffering right now, bro. Juliana Pena is looking like the biggest star in women's bantamweight right now. And the fact is the next title fight has to include her, which really sucks, by the way. And I say there's nothing against Juliana Pena here, but like that's not exactly true here. If you've seen her striking, and you also keep in mind that she became a champion of women's bantamweight, you really can't argue that women's bantamweight is the best of all divisions in women's MMA. No, it's just not that good, frankly. There is almost no effort put into this division in terms of recruiting talent, where you can be an undefeated prospect all the way up, you get into like that top 5 area, and then the skill gap is just massive. But that's not as bad as some of the other divisions in women's MMA, but they are just more entertaining, frankly. So, women's bantamweight has to go in D tier because you can't justify putting it in C tier, and it's just not as bad as featherweight. It's as simple as that. The third division that we're going to talk about, there's some light to the end of the tunnel. Women's flyweight. So, women's flyweight is the only division that gives me hope in women's MMA, and I'm 100% honest with you right now. Women's flyweight, Grasso Shevchenko, have sold this division so well recently that I think women's MMA is going to return to, I don't want to say golden age, because as much as we disliked Ronda Rousey, bro, she brought women's MMA to the mainstream, and now we're starting to fade ever since Amanda Nunes left. And I think Grasso and Shevchenko are going to bring it back up to a decent standard. I don't think we're going to get up to the heights, but we can justify putting it as a fight night main event, and we can justify making it either a feature fight or a co-main. We no longer have to put the championship of the world as a, like, we'll just slide it in as a feature fight and just hope for the best. But women's flyweight gives me faith in the future of women's MMA, but it's not as good as the other divisions I'm going to talk about, so that's why it goes in C tier. Next division is going to be women's strawweight. Okay, I say women's strawweight just to keep it light, but strawweight I have some faith in, but this is the problem. It goes in D tier. Now, the reason it goes in D tier isn't because it's as bad as bantamweight, but because it's so ridiculously top-heavy. It is the most top-heavy division in women's MMA, easily. Over featherweight. You look at the last title defense of Zhang Weili. She made the title challenger look like she was making her professional debut. And that shouldn't happen in a division that you're trying to improve. The fact is it was Zhang Weili, Jessica Andrade, and Rose Namajunas when she was fighting there, and then there was everybody else, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but she's no longer fighting. But that division has good bones, and I don't fear for that division going under. I am afraid that it's going to turn into Zhang Weili versus everybody else, and I'm going to be honest with you. Weili right now is not a big enough name to sell a division like an Amanda Nunes, but I have hope, especially if we see a Zhang Weili versus Shevchenko or a Grasso. That way we can sell that just a little bit more. But for now, it goes in D tier. Alright guys, thank you for bearing with me. Now we're going to get into the men's divisions. Light heavyweight. Okay, don't hate me for this one. Light heavyweight, my opinions on light heavyweight have shifted, okay? I used to think that light heavyweight was one of the more talented divisions when I first became an MMA fan, like probably around 8 years ago. But now I've grown up and I now see it for what it is. Light heavyweight is one of the most least talented divisions in the UFC. And my eyes were open to this when Alex Pereira became champion. This is nothing against Alex Pereira, but it is kind of wild that somebody who has the takedown defense and the grappling pedigree of Alex Pereira is able to come into your division and become champion. Now, he hasn't fought an Ankalaev, he hasn't defended the belt yet, but Alex Pereira becoming champion in your division is kind of a bad look. Also, when you take into account that the stars that are in your division aren't the most entertaining yet. There's good bones to light heavyweight. We saw that with John Jones. We saw that with DC. This division, I think, is going to get better in the next couple years. But as of right now, you have Alex Pereira, Yuri Prohaska, who can sell that division. We also got Jan, but I don't think we're going to have Jan too much longer. I'm not super worried about light heavyweight, but for right now, it's a hard C tier. I wouldn't say it's the worst C tier, but it's definitely mid C tier. Now, speaking of C tier, let's talk about heavyweight. Now, I put in the thumbnail, heavyweight is mid. Yeah, no, it is. So, heavyweight is only a big deal because of boxing. Because boxing brought that, oh, this is a heavyweight championship of the world. The biggest fighters, that means the best fighters, right? No, heavyweight probably has the least talented roster of every division. There are bantamweight fighters that are unranked, pound for pound, that would beat people that are ranked in the heavyweight division. And I do mean that. I love Tai Tuivasa, man. I love Derek Lewis. Heavyweight is the only division with somebody with that skill level could be a title contender at some point in their career. It's just not that good. Now, also extremely top-heavy. Cyril Gane, great striker, doesn't really know how to wrestle. Tom Aspinall, extremely well-rounded, but that's rare for this division. Almeida's like your standard light heavyweight, and then there's John Jones, which comes from light heavyweight. Doesn't really count. And for that reason, heavyweight is mid. It is C tier, but I'm going to put it at the top of C tier because it is entertaining to watch, and I do take that into account. But it doesn't earn its way in the B tier with talent. That's all I'm saying. Our next division is going to be men's flyweight. Okay. My first controversial opinion, or second, depending if you like my takes on women's MMA. But flyweight, I believe, is better than heavyweight. Is it more entertaining than heavyweight? No. It's objectively more talented. Frankly, Pantoja is more talented than any heavyweight that has ever competed in that division outside of maybe DC and, of course, John Jones. But again, John Jones is more light heavyweight than he is a heavyweight. But Pantoja, Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo, the biggest problem with flyweight, it's pretty hard to promote. It really is. It's hard to build up a star at flyweight. I mean, Demetrius Johnson could not attract an audience, and I think Demetrius Johnson is a legitimate good personality. So I hope Pantoja can get some title defenses and get people to his side, and then we can finally get some hype at flyweight, because flyweight is kind of treated like the women's MMA division of the men's MMA divisions. What I mean by that is whenever flyweight goes on a card, you have to put it as the co-main. It's really hard to put it as the main event. And I get it. It's hard to put that over any other weight class because they are lighter. It's disrespectful nonetheless, and I hope they can get that respect back because flyweight is objectively extremely talented. I will give them in B tier, but I understand why people don't like watching it. Our next division is going to be featherweight. Okay, we're getting into the good shit. So featherweight's an A tier. I'm just going to say that right now. But featherweight has a problem, and I think I'm a little bit worried about it. It's pretty top heavy, but top heavy in the way that you have Volkanovski and Max Holloway and a few other people like an Ilia Topuria, a Yair Rodriguez, and then everybody else. That's really it. Like, you have good personalities. You can sell that division really well. Volkanovski has done a lot for that. Holloway has done a lot for that. But I'm worried that we think featherweight is really skilled. But the problem is Volkanovski is just so much better than everybody that it's hard to tell how good a contender is until they fight for the title. Like, Ilia Topuria is undefeated, is a beast, has power for 155. Everybody thinks he gets absolutely steamrolled by Volkanovski. Like, that is a problem with the division when we can't really put faith in contenders because, yeah, you're good, but you're not champion good. And that is a sign of a division that has problems. But featherweight is just too damn entertaining to put it below A tier. So I have to stick it in there. But I would say it's around a low, maybe a mid A tier. We'll see at the end of this. Our next division, we're getting into more of that good shit. We got lightweight. Let's keep it going. Lightweight's A tier, easily. Lightweight has the most stars of any division. Like, objectively. Everybody in the top 15 is objectively skilled. You know, but some are flukier than others. Gamrot has a fluky win streak. But I mean, like, we got Michael Chandler. Conor McGregor brings the star power. Let me preface that. Islam Makhachev, best fighter in the UFC. You got Charles Oliveira, who's one of the biggest names globally for the UFC. Dan Hooker's a dog. You got Bobby Green, Paddy the Baddy. I mean, we got generations of fighters that are going to be bringing hype to that division. And it all started when Conor McGregor won the belt at lightweight and brought the eyes to an already talented division since BJ Penn. And for that reason, it has to go A tier. Like, there's no way not justifying that. Next up is the middleweight division. Now, some of you that are coming over from TikTok are going to think, oh, easy A tier. I'm a Sean Strickland fan. No, it does not go in A tier because Alex Pereira was able to steamroll through your division and become champion. Now, middleweight is better than light heavyweight because they do have a lot of crazy talent that's coming up. You got Bo Nickel and Khamzat Chimaev coming up in the same division. And for that reason, it goes above C tier. But, again, it's fairly top heavy. Okay, we got Sean Strickland. You have Robert Whittaker, who I know people are saying that is chinned. I think Dricus just caught him well, or Dricus is way better than we thought he was. And you used to have Israel Adesanya. If there was Israel, I might justify putting this in a low A tier. But if it's just Son Strickland, it goes above C tier because of marketability and new talent. So that for that reason, it goes in low B tier. Our next division for this video is going to be welterweight. Welterweight has it all, really. Now, it has some problems, don't get me wrong. But we have a good champion in Leon Edwards. We got Colby Covington, brings the star power. We got extremely talented up-and-comers in Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Gary. So we have the future of the division secured. We have today of the division secured. So what's the problems with it? It's kind of hard to find a champion that wants to defend the belt. Leon wants to become a double champion. Colby Covington wants to fight Islam Makhachev or fight Son Strickland to become a double champ. I just want a champion that stays focused, frankly. And I'm kind of counting down the days for Shavkat Rakhmonov to become champion of the division. Purely because I think he'll defend the belt and that'll just be his thing. And that'll be a fun aids for this division. It's above B tier. You kind of have to put it in A tier for those reasons. And the gripes that I have with the division are pretty minuscule, really. It just doesn't have the name value of a lightweight yet. But I think it will in the future. But it goes in A tier. Our last weight class before I get to the unveiling of our S tier is going to be bantamweight. Now, bantamweight is a difficult one to rank purely because people have really gotten the bantamweight in recent years, and I mean about like the casual fan base, like the fan base that makes up like 80% of this. They've gotten into it because of O'Malley. O'Malley's become champion. Whether you like O'Malley or not, the amount of press it is going to bring to bantamweight is going to be amazing for fighters like Chito Vera, Henry Cejudo, even Merab Dvalishvili. But outside of O'Malley, there isn't any crazy marketable stars yet. Corey Sandhagen has a lot of, has some decent name value. Cejudo, I don't think Cejudo's going to be around for very long, but he has good name value. And Merab is pretty hard to market, frankly. But, so, the marketing of this division is carried by O'Malley. But the talent of bantamweight, I would probably say, on average, is the most talented division. Will that earn an S tier? We're going to get to that in a moment. But bantamweight is an A tier. Marketability, it needs to work on. But talent, it's the most talented division in the UFC. And now, it's time for me to unveil what the S tier of all the UFC weight classes are. And to the surprise of some, it's lightweight. It has to be lightweight. Lightweight has the perfect blend of talent, name value, marketability, history. I mean, it has it all. It has one of the best lineages out of all the divisions, spanning all the way back to Jens Pulver, going up to modern-day Islam Makhachev. Now, Islam Makhachev is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC. I believe, off the top of my head, I could be wrong about this, the lightweight division has the most fighters that are ranked in the top 15 pound-for-pound rankings than any other division that just aren't champions. Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier were ranked in the top 15. I think Justin Gaethje took it now. But if that doesn't say how talented your division is, I don't know what is. Lightweight division, if you look up lightweight, it is more popular than any other division other than heavyweight, but heavyweight's just popular because of that name, heavyweight. The fact is that before somebody like Conor, who brought that name value, nobody really cared about the lightweight division purely because, really, where they were like, oh, you're 155 pounds, really? But now that stigma's kind of passed over. Everybody loves the 155-pound division. Everybody loves the saga of Conor and Khabib. Now we have Islam Makhachev reigning. I mean, it's the best division, objectively. But if you disagree with me on any of the placements of any of the weight classes on this tier list, put in the comment section below and give a good argument. I'll respond in the comment sections below. And if you enjoy this content, please consider it a like, a subscribe. 90% of you are not subscribed. It means a lot in the algorithm. And without further ado,